Welcome to this third in the video series on zero-based budgeting and cash flow management using the Managing My Money or MMM Excel tool. This video will focus on expense tracking tools. There are several tools. We'll go over all of these. An important note is that we will not be covering the tools that deal with importing of bank data. That will be covered in a separate video. So first, let's look at affinities, which are auto-categorization and category suggestions. This is the sheet where you can enter track information for all of your transactions. So I'm going to go give some examples about the affinity, which is auto-categorization and suggestions. So first, I'm going to show you the basic behavior. So I'm going to put in a date of March 1, 2021. And just for example, I'm going to put in Panera Bread. Now you'll notice that when I leave that, it automatically selects eating out as the category for Panera Bread. So that, and when I click on it, there's nothing special, but I can change it to any of the categories I had set up for my zero-based budget. Another example, we'll do another one. And it will go Shell. You'll see that automatically it selects fuel. Now, one thing to note about this is that this behavior is it has an include functionality, which means that I can put in something like Shell station number 97 and it'll still pick fuel. I can say Shell in Canada on trip and it'll still pick auto fuel because it sees Shell within the name of the vendor, right? Same thing with Panera Bread. You know, I can do Panera Bread Extreme, and it's going to pick that. So that's the basic behavior of auto-categorization. Now let me show you a different behavior that you can get, which is the combination of auto-categorization and suggestions. So this is with Walmart. So if I pick Walmart, you'll see that it auto-categorizes to groceries, because I do a lot of groceries at Walmart in that example. But I get an added benefit that if I click on this, it now shows me to the right here some suggestions of things that I've spent at Walmart on the past that I can pick. So it might be that this time I went and I did some clothes shopping. So I can click clothing here and it'll automatically change it. So the nice thing is this shows the types of categories that I normally use at that vendor. That way I don't have to go ahead and pick it from the drop-down list. It's a lot simpler. So let me show you a different behavior again, which is auto suggestions without autofill. So the example might be, in this case, Amazon. So on Amazon, there's so many things I do with Amazon. I don't want it to tell me a default one because it could be anything. But when I click on there, I get the auto suggestion. So it says, okay, in the past I've done all of these types of spends, and I can pick any one of them, right? Office supplies, and it'll fill it in for me, right? So those are the basic different functionalities that you get with both auto categorization and suggestions. Now, something to let you know that this behavior does not require any action on your part. So for example, let's say that you put in on all of these, I had already had something set up for them, but let's pick something that we've never seen before. So we'll call this one Zubies. I don't know, I'm making a name up, right? Zubies. And let's say that at Zubies, I'm going to use Zubies for, I'm going to just say travel, right? I stopped at a Zubies on travel and I put that in there. Okay, so the next time I type in Zubies, it's going to automatically put that in. So the fact that I did it one time, it remembers that that's what I did and it's going to auto-populate it for me. But let's say that this time I say, well, no, this time I actually did tolls. I had to pay some tolls, right? It wasn't travel. You got it wrong, right? So the next time you enter Zubies, you're going to get the suggestions. It's going to say, hey, I see that you've you've done travel expenses there and tolls, and it'll give you the option to pick those two. So again, this is just a simple way to help you easily categorize your expenses. Now, you can take the existing out-of-the-box functionality, but you can also control it, right? You can decide, do I want the Amazon behavior where I don't autofill, but I do get suggestions, or do I want the standard behavior? What do I want to do? Or on the Amazon one, I'll give you an example here. I mentioned that normally I can put in shell station whatever, and it does that. But for Amazon, I actually have set it up so that it's an exact match. So if I put Amazon Prime, for example, it's not going to give me any suggestions, because I've told it only give me the suggestions if it's exactly Amazon. If it's Amazon Prime, don't give me suggestions. I've also set up that if it's Amazon Music, it will give me a specific one without the suggestions. So all of these behaviors you can manage. And the way you do it is with this button here called Affinity. When you click the Affinity button, it pops up and you'll see that there's a table that that is auto-populated by the system. So if you look at the bottom here, the Zubies one, when we entered Zubies and then we said we categorized it as travel, it then entered in these 3 entries for us. And then when we changed it to tolls, it entered another one. So this is how it builds up its database of knowledge about what kinds of categories are associated with that particular vendor. So the 2 things that you can kind of modify on here are this partial match column. By default, partial match is selected, meaning if I put in Zubies, Kansas, it'll still give me a Zubies. It'll look and find any match of Zubies. But if you look at the Amazon one, I told it, no, I unchecked the partial match. I came in here after I had put Amazon in, and I deleted the X that was in this cell. By that I'm saying only show me these as suggestions if it's an exact match for Amazon. For Amazon Music, give me this suggestion, but if it's Amazon without anything else, then give me these suggestions, right? The other thing you can change is the exclude column. The exclude column basically says, by the way, everything that's on here will be used as suggestions, but the exclude says don't autofill, right? So what I did by excluding everything Amazon, I'm saying don't autofill anything for Amazon. Now, the way the system works is it's actually going to take, for a given vendor, let's go down to Walmart, for example. So Walmart, I have 2 entries. It's going to find it'll do everything Walmart will show up in the suggestions, right? But the first one that it encounters on this list, which is not excluded, is the one that it will auto-populate, auto-categorize. So for example, I would expect that it will be groceries. So if to give an example, if I come down here and I type in Walmart, you see that it does groceries and I see the 2 options. But I can change that behavior if I want. I go into the Affinity and I say, okay, you know what? I like groceries as an option, but I'm going to exclude it as my autofill. So now I expect my autofill will have clothing. So if I come over here and I type in Walmart the next time, and I go, indeed, there it is. It gives me clothing, and groceries is still an option. Now, by the way, you can also manually enter in vendor names. You can fill this in yourself. You don't need to wait for the system to autofill it for you. Another thing that I would say about this functionality is it's all built in to give you the auto-categorization and the options, right, as you go. However, in some cases you might say, oh, see this Amazon Prime? There might be some, let me do something here. I'm going to go and say Amazon Prime, and I'm going to say I want Amazon Prime to be an optional service streaming. I put Netflix there, but I'll put Amazon Prime. So I might have some that I left blank in the past, right? You'll see that the next time I click it, it gives me this as an option. But I might have a whole bunch of them in the past. So what I can do is go into the Affinity, and I can use this panel here to update, to push a rule change. So the way I do that is I give it a date range, right? Now to work, I just need to confirm it actually needs a date. So, and these are just examples. I didn't put dates in there. Dates are important for your transactions. So if I go into Affinity and I give it a date range and I say, I have an option to give the scope. I can either take a rule, for example, this one for Amazon Prime that I entered, I'm gonna click it, right? And you'll see that the scope I can push a selected rule or all the rules for that date range. In this case, I'm going to push just the selected rule, and then anyone that you click with your mouse, you'll see that that rule will show up in blue in this box here. I want the Amazon Prime one, so I want to say I want to push streaming as the category for all Amazon Prime entries in this date range, but I can choose whether I only want to fill the empty categories or overwrite filled ones. In this case, I'm going to say only overwrite the empty ones. And just to give you an example here, I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to come in here and say, no, you know what? For Amazon Prime is haircuts, right? So now when I click it, you'll see it's going to do haircuts. I'm going to go ahead and say, don't overwrite the filled ones, only fill in the empty ones. So I'm going to say go, and you'll see it says one entry was updated, and I can then scroll to the right and it'll show me, look, on March 9th, you had an Amazon Prime entry with no category, and we've recategorized it to haircuts, right? And if I close this screen and I come and look at my Amazon Prime entries, one is haircuts, that was the one that was blank, and one still remains as streaming because I told it to only update the ones that were blank. But now I can go ahead and update both of these to something different. If I go into my affinities and I say, you know what? No, I want my Amazon Prime to actually be, I'm going to call it just something different. I'm going to call it music. My Amazon Prime, I'm going to call music, just for this example, right? So first I've got to select it and make sure that it shows up in the selection here. Now I'm going to change this to say, yes, I want it to fill empty ones, but I also want it to overwrite existing ones in that date range. So go ahead, and now you'll see that there were 2 entries updated. And if I scroll to the right here, you'll see that it changed one from haircuts to music and one from Netflix to music. And if I close, you'll see that indeed my Amazon Prime is now both of them show music. And if I type in a new Amazon Prime in the future, it's going to be music. So that's just to show you how you can control within the Affinities screen how the auto-categorization and the suggestions, right, are used. So now let's move on to the next section. So splits are fairly straightforward to explain. I have an example of a split here, and then we'll do a new one. So first, there is a flag on the left-hand side that here in this column that you can select split, and that will identify it as a split. When you do that, it sets the category for you to split. So this one's already done. So I'm going to click on split, and you'll see what happens is it allows you to take your total amount for that vendor for that date and split it into up to from 1 to 10 different categories. So as you put them in, then the categories will go down until you've spent all the money and allocated all the money, and it goes to 0. So this one's already in there. Let me show you how to set up a new one. So let's say that I'm going to do one now for Walmart. So when I come in here, I can just categorize this one. Let's say I have Walmart here. If you remember, it'll auto-categorize something for me. But this is maybe $100 purchase that I want to allocate between multiple categories, right? And normally I have clothing or groceries. This one I have half as clothing and half as groceries or something like that. So the way you do that is you go ahead and select split from the list, and it will change the category to split pending. That means that you have not yet allocated your categories. Click on split pending and it'll take you to a clean split screen, in which case you can go ahead and then say, and you can do your allocation. If you look, you have $100, right, is pre-allocated to the first one, which I haven't set yet, but I'm going to go ahead and pick clothing. But in reality, I only spent around, let's say $45 on clothing. So what it'll do is it'll say, okay, you spent $45 on clothing, you have $55 remaining. Okay, well, I actually bought some groceries, so household groceries, and I, spent $50 on groceries, right? And now I have $5 remaining. Now I'm just going to go ahead and come in here and say I'm going to put in a discretionary miscellaneous for $5 to round out this example. Now all of my money is allocated and I can save it. When I save it, it changes from split pending to split. And if I want to look at that in the future, I just click on it and it'll take me back to my split so I can look at it. So that's how you do splits. Now I'm going to show you one more thing about splits, however, that might be helpful. So let's say that I do an Amazon split. Let's say that I go in and I say, a different day, and this one's going to be Amazon for also, let's say $75, and I want to split this one as well. So again, I say split, go split pending, I click on it, and it lets me then pick something. I'm just going to make some things up here so I can show you 25. I'm going to pick something else and say 50, done. My split's all done. Hit save. It goes from split pending to split. But now what happens if sometime in the future, let's say a month from now or something, let's say that I have a recurring category. So I'm going to go ahead and say split. I'm going to do Amazon again. But I might have, if you remember, that split it was between pet care and medical and office supplies. So I might have a recurring $200 that happens every month. If I do that and I click the split pending, it's going to find the pattern match. It's going to say, hey, I see that you've done a split at Amazon before for $200. This is what you did last time. Do you want to keep this? So I can simply hit save, done. And it warns you here, hey, this isn't saved. This is just pattern match. You can change this because it might be different, right? But if you don't, you can just hit save, and now it saves that as a new split that has, so every month when I hit that 200, I just hit split, open, save, all I have to do. And that's really all there is to say about splits. It's very powerful, but very simple. And we can move on to the next section. Filtering in this tool is the standard Excel filtering, but for those people who are not familiar with Excel, I'm going to show you the power of how you can use it on this screen. So basically all of the little, where you see the up, down, the little carrots, all of these columns can be filtered. And one thing to note is that this subtotal shows you the total of everything that's displayed on the screen, including filters. So for example, if I go in here and I say, I want to see how much did I spend at Kroger, I can just type in Kroger and hit enter, and it will filter by Kroger, and I can see that I spent $298.13 for all the instances of Kroger that I see here. Now, another thing to be aware of is the clear filters button. That allows you to start over. It will clear all your filters out. You can start over. Let me give you another example. Category. Let's say that instead of typing in a category, I'm going to unselect all the categories. I'm going to pick, I want to see all of my discretionary eating out, discretionary entertainment, and discretionary miscellaneous. those three. Hit OK, and that's all my discretionary, $414.63 over this time range. Now you can also, this is an example, so I don't have a lot of, I only have like 1 month of data in here, but you can pick which months, or even within a month, what days. Let's say I only want, let's say, the first half of the month. So I'm going to go down here and unselect the days after the 14th. And this will then show me discretionary funds that I spent $215 on the first half of January. Again, you can clear the filters here. I do want to point out that there is, if you look on the bottom, a report tab, and we'll go over that in a different video, that can generate all sorts of reports and drill downs for you. But you can do a lot of that reporting yourself just using the filters here to find basic information. And we can move on to the next section. So for this section, we'll be covering the remainder of the tools that are not related to data import. So we'll be covering on the flags column, we'll be covering credit, income, and the X flag. Then across the top, we'll be covering the auto scroll and the positive expense entry. So first, let's look at the flags. So in this case, we talked about filtering, and the purpose for the X flag is to mark something as you're entering data. If you find some issue, like you say, hey, this has hit my bank account, but I don't recognize it, or I recognize it, but the value seems wrong, I need to follow up with the vendor. Whatever reason that you want to flag something for later follow-up, you can mark it with this X. And then in the optional description, you can type in a reason about why it was, why you flagged it for follow-up. Then later, when you have time to go through and do some work on your finances, you can filter by the X, which is your follow-up flag, and it'll pull up all the ones that you had said you needed to follow up on. And when you're done working and figuring out what's going on with those ones, you can then clear out the flag, and then that will clear it up from your future work to do. So that's what that flag is for. The second one is income. So the income flag is because every single entry that you put in here needs to have a category. You can't leave the category blank. Well, the categories are your expenses that we entered in your expense planning. Income is not part of that. So the way that you flag income is, and I'll show you an example here. If I delete the income category, right, I can't get it by something from the drop-down list. So what I can do is I can pick income from the this flag column, and that then will mark as income, and the rest of the system will know to process it as income. And then, of course, as mentioned, you can also filter on income and see all of your income that you have gotten over whatever period of time you're looking at. So that's the purpose for the income flag. Okay, so now I want to talk a bit about, we'll get to the credit one in just a minute. I want to talk about this positive expense entry. So right now the default is on. Positive expense entry is very helpful for when you're doing a lot of manual data entry. When you're automatically importing data, to be covered later in a different video, it will import automatically all of your expenses as negative values and all of your income and credits as positive values. But when you're doing manual entry, you have to remember to put in a negative value. So if your positive expense entry is off, right, then if you put in a transaction, for example, you say, this way, a Topgolf, right? If I put in $54, that looks like a credit. So you actually have to put in negative $54. So 95% of your entries are going to be for expenses, not for income or credits. So most of the time you have to remember to be continuing to put in a negative value. by putting the positive expense entry to on, which I like, that's where I like to keep it, right? That allows you to put in, so if I here for Walmart, and if I put in here $12, it will automatically change the value to a negative for you. If it's negative, it'll keep it negative, but it'll make sure that your expenses are negative. That being said, the way you can make something positive, let's say that you went to Walmart and you had a $12 expense, right? And then you went back to Walmart and you had an actual $6 credit because they refunded you some money. It's a refund, right? So in that case, you can come over here and pick credit from the flag and it will make that positive. So anything that is flagged by income or flagged by credit will always be marked positive on the amount. Everything else will be negative. That's what the positive expense entry does. It allows you not to worry about signs. You just enter the value and it will automatically take care of the correct sign for you. Okay, so now we've covered all the flags, income, credit, and the follow-up flag. And we've done the positive expense entry. I want to talk now about the auto scroll. So auto scroll is meant, again, mostly helps when you're doing manual data entry, but you can use it at any time. Normally, you can have months worth of expenses in here, or even years worth of expenses. So this can get to be hundreds or thousands of rows long. And so when you're doing manual data entry, when you first come to the screen, typically you want to be, by the way, this sheet will always auto sort for you from the newest transactions on the bottom. And then that way, when you're entering data, you can always just append them to the bottom. So when you leave the screen and come back, it will auto sort for you. But what that does is if I want to come to the screen and start entering values, or I want to see the values that are the most recent, right? I have to keep scrolling to the bottom. So by turning the auto scroll on, when I leave and come back to the screen, it'll automatically scroll me right to the bottom. It'll always show a set of about 15 of the most recent expenditures, and then it'll give me a place at the bottom where I can just start adding things. So this is very helpful when I want to be working with the most recent items. It'll always take me here. Now, you can toggle this all that you want. So for example, let's say that you're doing some work looking at something from 2 months ago, and you're doing a follow-up, let's say one of these X things, and you say, well, I need to leave the screen and come back. I can always easily switch the auto scroll to off, and then that way, when I leave and I come back, I'm still at the same spot, right? Leave and come back, I'm still at the same spot. When I'm all done, I can turn the auto scroll back on. That way, the next time I come into work, it'll take me right back to the bottom where I can start entering values. So that is it for all of the basic tools for this screen. So let's move and to the end of this presentation. If you've been following my video series and you found value in what this tool can do for you, then I'd like to share with you the prerequisites for using the MMM Managing My Money tool in Excel. First of all, as noted, it is free to download and to use, but you need to email mmm.expensplanning@gmail.com to obtain an activation code and download instructions. Second, this runs on a local version of Microsoft Excel, so it's not running on cloud. Everything will be local on your machine, but it requires that you have Office 365 version running locally on your machine. It only uses United States regional date and currency formats. And as mentioned before, although this is a free tool that I'm making available, there is, if you desire to have data imported from your bank or credit card companies, then that requires an optional paid subscription to an unaffiliated service, one of two, right, to get that data into Excel, into this tool in a simple manner. The preferred way, in my mind, is Tiller Money, as it's a one-step direct bank to Excel import. Another option is Quicken. So if you have Quicken, they provide a mechanism for importing data from your bank into Quicken, and then this tool provides a mechanism to pull that data out of Quicken and into the MMM transaction screen. I hope you found value in this video, and thank you for watching.